I first came across this story. It was around Christmas time in 2015. I remember, the cynical journalist in me was like, oh wow, I can actually pitch this for the Christmas diary, like the Grinch who stole Christmas.
Sunday Times journalist Sabelo Skiti thought he was writing a one-off article about a young man who'd been cheated by a dodgy litigation lawyer from the Eastern Cape. But it would become so much more.
Young guy who had been one of Zuko Nonxuba's clients, he said to me, if you just took the time to look, villages across Transkei are littered with this guy's victims. That was like the thing that sparked it for me. I knew that then I had to go to these villages.
What Skiti didn't know at the time was that he had just broken a story that would lead to a decade-long investigation into the alleged criminal activities of the litigation attorney Zuko Nonxuba.
No one's going to recognize me.
Working for the Special Investigating Unit at the time, the press articles piqued the interest of an investigator we will call Sarah. To protect her identity and safety, Sarah's words are repeated by an actor.
His name kept coming up, in the Sunday Times or the Daily Dispatch, and the articles were talking about medical negligence, suspected fraud, maladministration. So we did our own follow-up investigations, identified these cases, and found that everything in the articles was true.
The Special Investigating Unit had been seconded to the Eastern Cape to investigate the province's medical negligence crises amounting to billions of rands, and one of the lawyers the spotlight fell on was Nonxuba.
The plaintiffs would say that they got about 200,000 rand or 230,000 rand for their cerebral palsy child, yet we are sitting with a court order that has awarded them 23 million or 16 million rand. And these guys had no idea.
He particularly targeted those villages around Transkei because he knew that there, people are desperate. These were kids that had been born with cerebral palsy because of, the atrocious conditions in some of the hospitals in the former Transkei.
Cerebral palsy can occur when a baby is starved of oxygen in the first few minutes of its life. It can be avoided with proper medical care, but South Africa has among the highest proportion of CP babies in the world due to inadequate resources and skills in state hospitals. This medical negligence epidemic has created the perfect breeding ground for money-hungry litigation lawyers like Nonxuba. After his traumatic 5-day-long delivery at a state hospital, 𝗀𝗵𝗶𝘀 son, 𝗀𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗶, started having seizures straight away.
But lo mntana ucimele akabonakali nakayihleli akabonakali nakayivukile but unalengalo lengalo itheni yathi nesiyandiphendulayo wathi lo mntana yaqhuzula oke bephume nje waqhuzula.
𝗀𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗶 would later be diagnosed with cerebral palsy.
Phansi koba umntana wam ngumntana othambileyo wathi ngosene 12 months yayingathi ngumntana ona 1 month.
In 2013, 𝗀𝗵𝗶𝗶𝗀 was approached by one of Nonxuba's agents. This is standard practice for dodgy litigation lawyers. Even though it is illegal, they send out scouts to villages, clinics and hospitals to look for clients.
He was paying people in the villages to recruit mothers with cerebral palsy children.
𝗀𝗵𝗶𝗀𝗀 and her son 𝗀𝗵𝗶𝗀 were taken by Nonxuba's men to see doctors in Gqeberha and Johannesburg. Their medical records were copied and they were taken home. It was almost a year before she heard from Nonxuba again.
Kulapho aye wandibiza khona ke ngoku pha High Court eMthatha. Wayeqale ngothi imali endiyifumene endizayifumana yi3 million. Utsho ngo2014 yena wabe sithi ke ngokuyigqibile into ebeyenza akukho nto izawuphinda indidibanise naye.
Kept in the dark, 𝗀𝗵𝗶𝗀𝗀's mom had no idea that her son had won a 12.4 million rand medical negligence payout, which was paid to Nonxuba Inc. in 2014. Nonxuba had been given 6 months by the court to open a trust in 𝗀𝗵𝗶𝗀𝗀's name, which is a special kind of account managed by independent trustees in order to keep people's money safe. But when Skiti arrived at the family's home during his investigation, it was 2 years later. They hadn't received a cent and knew nothing about any trust.
In the case of 𝗀𝗵𝗶𝘀, there had absolutely been nothing that had been done. His mother actually was suffering because she was taking public transport, taking him to a public hospital. And that money was for that express purpose to make sure that it looks after his medical needs in the now and going into the future.
Medical negligence litigation is big business that is crippling an already broken state health system. To date, Nonxuba has been paid out nearly 600 million rand in potentially fraudulent medical negligence claims against the Department of Health. As the SIU investigation intensified, Sarah and her team found evidence that Nonxuba was not only not paying out on legitimate claims, he was also submitting completely fraudulent claims.
We started comparing. And so many of these summonses were basically identical. The same amount, the same layout, the same merits. And he wasn't even bothering to make them unique to each patient.
Pamela Ngandwana is a single mother who lives out here alone with her cerebral palsy daughter, 𝗬𝗓𝗄. She can't work or even travel far from home as her daughter needs 24-hour care. In 2014, while collecting her daughter's disability grant, Pamela was randomly approached by someone claiming to know a lawyer who could help with her child.
Wabuza into okubana ndiyalifuna luncedo lobana ndingafumana ii-wheelchair zomntana. Ndathi ke mna ke ewe. Wathi wathatha iinamba zam azinike uMr Nonxuba.
Even though Pamela's daughter hadn't even been born in a hospital, Nonxuba traveled all the way to her village to sign her up and collect her details so he could submit a medical negligence claim against the state.
Isicelile amakhadi esibhedlele wafotokopa ne-ID wayifotokopa ne-birth certificate wazifotokopa.
Without Pamela's knowledge, Nonxuba submitted a bogus 16.5 million rand claim against the Eastern Cape Health Department, which was intercepted by the Special Investigating Unit.
According to the summons, which is drafted by Nonxuba, she gave birth in the hospital, but the medical records show BBA, which is born before admission. So in other words, you walk into the hospital with the child. So the summons is false.
Pamela's case was one of 6 fraudulent medical negligence claims that the SIU discovered in only a few months.
These women are, they're also his victims because he gives them hope. He makes promises to them that they're going to get grants. They're going to get grants for these children, for their medical care, and from the word go, he lies to them.
While these fraud investigations were underway, Nonxuba continued to win millions against the Eastern Cape Department of Health. Having perfected his modus operandi, he spread his wings to the Western Cape, targeting the same clientele, desperate mothers of cerebral palsy babies from poor areas.
The Western Cape had 93 medical negligence cases lodged for the whole province against them, 53 of which were Nonxuba. 33 matters of the 53 were referred for criminal prosecution. How far the matters are, I don't know.
The Hawks confirmed that an investigation into Nonxuba has begun, but we were shocked to discover that almost 5 years since they started, Nonxuba had not been charged.
Did you ever, in that time, get to speak to Zuko Nonxuba?
Our one interaction with him before we published the first story, it didn't go very well. We found was that he was a very evasive person because I think he was someone who was not used to being held accountable.
As our investigation into Nonxuba escalated and we traveled deeper into rural Eastern Cape, it became obvious that these families felt so intimidated by the fancy lawyer in a shiny suit that many of them feared that they had actually done something wrong, not Nonxuba.
You've got innocent, poor, semi-literate people that you can exploit. And that is exactly what he did. He exploited all of them.
We get a tip-off that the fraud may go even deeper. We are shown multiple cases where Nonxuba had won millions from the Department of Health without paying over the money into the children's trust accounts. To verify the allegations, we drive to Willowvale, where another of his clients, Millicent Molose, should have been the recipient of a 15 million rand payout for her son.
I think Mr. Nonxuba ndidibane naye ngo-2015 or 16. KwaNonxuba attorneys unceda abantwana abaphila nokhubazeka. So wabethembisa into yokuba umntana uzamkhela indlu.
Millicent's son, Avile, was diagnosed with CP due to birth injuries at a state hospital. She was aware that Nonxuba was submitting a medical negligence claim for him, but she was never told the amount of the claim. The last time she heard from Nonxuba was in 2019.
Kwathiwa kaloku icase ivaliwe, so wandinika ke ngoku le 50,000.
Even though the evidence was overwhelming, we decided not to tell Millicent about the 15 million rand payout until we could confirm where the money went. In the meantime, we take the treacherous 2-hour journey back to Millicent's village, where her son lives during the week while she works in town.
Akho lula, umntana mfuna aye esikolweni. Umntana mfuna abe ne-wheelchair. Umntana mfuna abe right nje.
When we finally arrive at her home, Millicent is shocked to find her son completely alone.
Hello, boy. Doda. Ubodi. Dwana. Ayini luna. Ndathanga.
He's in a terrible state, lying in his own vomit, overheating, battling to breathe. Millicent's voice quivers as she tries to reassure her son that he's okay.
Ibuhlungu every day xa ndiya kuye. Andiyamva xa ehappy. Xa eright ngoku ebana mhlawumbi xa bengaphilanga.
Meanwhile, 𝗀𝗵𝗶𝗀𝗆 came back to us explaining that Nonxuba had finally set up a trust in Zubenati's name. This was 2 years after the court order, but again, there was no consequence for Nonxuba.
Wandibiza ke ngoku pha ngo-2016 wathi imali yayiphumile ngo-2014 iyi-12 million but iye yadelaya kodwa ke ngoimali endizayifumana yi-8 million.
Accountant 𝗀𝗵𝗶𝗶𝗆 is a co-trustee on Zubenati's trust, as well as on 11 of Nonxuba's other clients' accounts. Together with other trustees, they should have flagged irregularities with these trusts by now. Our producer tracks him down while he's on safari.
I think it was in 2014. I commenced work with Nonxuba. Once the matter's been settled in court, the attorney would contact me. I would be involved from the beginning in actually registering the trust at the master's office.
As a trustee, it is Davison's job to ensure that Nonxuba pays over all the capital and that the trust is then solely used to benefit the child. When we asked him about the fees that Nonxuba is deducting, he explained that Nonxuba was only entitled to 25%.
It looks like he's taking in the region of 60 to 70%.
He would often pay over a random amount of, say, 2 million, and then the next day another million, and claiming that he had limits on his bank transfers. And then that's when we would say, what's happening? And he says, then I'll get back to you. I will provide you with a full accounting summary, and the accounting summary never comes through.
Is it possible in your mind to say the trustees were not aware of what was going on?
Look, you would have to try very hard to convince me of that. For instance, a person like Philip James Davison is a chartered accountant. So the court order says there must be 12 million rand in this trust. If the lawyer or the attorney deposits 6 million, for argument's sake, that's the first thing that would be red flags for you as a trustee, is that, whoa, where's the full amount?
From the beginning, the trustees have queried the amount paid by Nonxuba. And he would reply that he's getting back, and these things just get delayed months and months and months, and you follow up and nothing happens.
It was shocking to hear that it had taken Davison and his co-trustees almost 6 years to take action against Nonxuba.
We eventually had a summons issued about a month ago, which was successfully delivered. And he has put in a notice to oppose, which is again another delaying tactic, which could set us back another couple of months.
With evidence in hand, we sit Millicent down to show her what the court had really awarded her son, the document Nonxuba failed to share with her. 15 million rand was her son's, not the 50,000 as he had told her.
Hi, bo. 13 million. 13 million. Yo.
That amount has been paid to Mr. Nonxuba. Stole from your child.
Millicent has now reported her case to the police, but unless Nonxuba has a change of heart or a crisis of conscience, it would be a long legal battle for her to recover her son's money.
Sorry, boy.
As South Africans, it's almost as if we've become numb to corruption or scammers stealing millions from government. But this time is different. Nonxuba is not only allegedly stealing money from the state, he's also stealing from desperate special needs children, money that's meant to give them a fighting chance at life. And he's using that money to make himself richer and richer and richer.
As this investigation went on, I kept thinking it couldn't get any worse, but it did. In 2021, Treasury did an audit into Nonxuba Inc., which exposed a potential shortfall of 263 million rand. This was state money that had been paid to Nonxuba to better the lives of these cerebral palsy children, and it had vanished. In an email from his lawyer, Nonxuba denied some of the claims against him while refusing to comment on others as the matter was still in court. Unsatisfied with his response, we tried to confront him at his offices in Johannesburg.
Surely he can't just do what he likes. He's getting away with all of this by the looks of things, which is like, why is the justice system not doing anything?
Subscriber you have dialed is not available at the moment.
All the numbers we had for him were also either off or no longer existed. So I guess all we can do now is wait for the wheels of justice to finally start turning. In 2022, Nonxuba was found guilty of fraud against the Eastern Cape Department of Health. But before he could be sentenced, the magistrate was killed in a car accident. The trial started from scratch in March this year. Nonxuba will also appear in the East London court on another 3 counts of fraud. After a long, drawn-out process, the Legal Practice Council finally managed to suspend Nonxuba last year. But he has contested his suspension in the Constitutional Court. So he continues practicing, having rebranded himself as an international arbitration lawyer from Sandton.
There's that saying, to understand a society, look at how it treats its kids and its elderly. Those were the people that Zuko Nonxuba targeted. The most vulnerable of our people in society. And instead of doing right by them, he stole from them. And not only from them, but he also stole from the country.